Hello, good morning, and welcome to our weekly edition of Tuesday Temple Takeaway. And as you're aware, it's Advent season, and so last week we started a new mini series on journeys into Bethlehem. And we looked at the journey of Mary and Joseph, who travelled from Nazareth because of a census that was decreed by the king. But of course, the overruling hand of God was involved in it all and brought them to the place that God had chosen for the birth of his son. So we're going to look at the journey of the wise men. It's probably the most famous journey that's written into the Christmas script, into the Christmas narrative. The journey of the wise men, it's assumed that there were three, but of course the Bible doesn't make that clear. We made an assumption that it's three. It might well have been a much larger group and with an entourage of advisors, etc. But what we do know is that there are three gifts that are mentioned, that these men who had travelled from the east, they come bearing gifts, and the three specific gifts that are mentioned are gold, frankincense, and myrrh. So the three wise men, or the kings from the east, as sometimes they are known, feature in every Christmas play or school production that I've ever seen. And it usually involves three nervous little boys who are all huddled in a corner, all waiting to come on to centre stage, dressed up in oriental garments and bringing gold and two other gifts that they sometimes struggle to pronounce. We've all seen those scenes in Christmas plays, etc. So the story of the wise men and their journey to seek out this newborn king is specifically mentioned, of course, in Matthew's Gospel. Actually, is the only one who refers to the journey of the Magi or the Magi, and there he gives space in his Gospel to include their journey. And he never mentions the shepherds, but of course he gives quite a bit of airtime to the wise men. And lots of questions are posed when it comes to the wise men. Theologians have long debated over the timing. What time did they arrive? Was Jesus a few months old, or was he still a newborn baby? And who were they? Were they kings? Were they just scholars or learned men? And there's lots of questions that seems to arise. And they were certainly knowledgeable men. They were students of science, it seems, and astronomy, but they were also deeply religious, because they had studied the Old Testament scriptures, or the scriptures of the Old Testament that point forward to the coming of the Messiah. And so they knew the scriptures, but they also knew the stars and in the sky. And so they genuinely believed that if they were to set out, or as they were about to set out on this journey of faith, then God would lead them. There would be a supernatural sign in the heavens. And of course that happened to be a star that would lead them, that would just be their sat-nav, if you like, that brings them to the place where Jesus was born. So their journey was truly a journey of faith, because imagine a friend or a family member asking them before their departure from Persia, where are you going exactly? And the answer would be, well, we don't know, How long will you be away? Well, we're not sure yet, And how will you find the person you're looking for? Well, we're not sure about that either. And we call them wise men. Wow, wise men, and they don't know very much, it seems. But of course it was a journey of faith. They were the first step always, is the first step in a journey is important. And they took that first step and they just threw themselves really on God, for God to guide them and God to lead them. Of course, it was no small undertaking. The journey from Persia to Jerusalem was in excess of 1,000 miles. And it was a journey of sacrifice. It'd be far different then than it would be today. Obviously, it would be very tiring, and They'd be mountainous ranges they'd have to cross, and they would be sat on a camel, presumably. They'd be freezing cold nights, and in all probability this journey would have taken them several weeks or even months. But they sacrificed their own comfort in order to search out the king. And, I wonder what God is calling you to and calling me to give up in order to seek out the king, in order to serve the king more effectively. What is God calling us to lay aside and to go on perhaps a fresh journey of faith or adventure with him? So they set out believing, looking for this newly born king of the Jews. But of course they were Gentiles, and they had obviously some Jewish history. They were knowledgeable about Jewish history, but they were primarily Gentiles. And so it's interesting that even at the birth of Jesus, God is widening the net. He's widening the appeal of his son to the Gentile world. And they believed, as they set out believing, and their belief led to action. They were willing to endure the ridicule of their friends, perhaps, and family members questioning why they were doing this, and to leave home comforts. They set off in faith, and they're laden with gifts. They knew that a baby had been born, but they didn't know where. They knew he was a king, but they didn't know his name. And they follow the star. And it's unlike any other star. It's a supernatural star. And each time they stopped to rest, they were a step nearer their destination. Their conviction would have deepened that they were being divinely led. There would have been excitement in their hearts as being divinely led and guided to the appointed place. And it was going to be worth all the effort. And whatever shape of form that star took, we're not sure. Some say it was a comet. Some say it was a conjunction of planets. Some would suggest it was a supernova that just burst into the sky like a flare and lit the sky up. But whatever form or shape it took, clearly the men on the ground were captivated by it. They opened the scriptures and they looked to the star. And those things just deepened their conviction and led them to the appointed place. We shouldn't be surprised, of course, that God wanted to signpost the birth of his son in a spectacular way. You remember the Psalms mentions that the heavens declare the glory of God, and heaven wanted to make an announcement. And God posts a star in the sky that's different to any other star. And that heralds and signposts the birth of the Son of God. And their journey, because they were working with logic as well as faith, their journey takes them to Jerusalem. Well, why wouldn't it? It was the capital city. It's the place where you would expect a royal baby to be born, in a palace, in salubrious surroundings. It was the centre. Jerusalem was the centre of the political and economic of power. And so they inquired of the king, as you know, King Herod, and that's another story in itself within the Christmas story. And of course, Herod was, it says, greatly disturbed, and all of Jerusalem with him. Because you imagine them going to him and saying, we're looking for a king, and he could say, well, you're looking at him. But there was another king that was born, of course, under his nose, so to speak. And then the star moves them on, and the star moves them on from Jerusalem, just 6 miles down the road, to the appointed place, or little town of Bethlehem. And the star was a sign in the cosmos that the Creator had become the Saviour. The Creator had come to a cradle. And, the star stops over the place, the very place where Jesus lay. Whether that's the manger or whether that's a house, we're not altogether sure about that. 3 men enter the home or the manger, wherever it might have been, with their gifts, and they worship the child. It's interesting, Matthew tells us they saw Mary, but they worshipped Jesus. And that's good for us to remember that. And then the narrative tells us that, of course, from there, because of Herod's wrath and and his subtlety of scheming and looking to kill baby Jesus, they travel home another way. How ironic it is that the little baby in the manger, or the little baby that's been born, was actually the one who threw the stars into space in the first place. Before the beginning of creation, this baby was there. We believe in the pre-existence of Jesus, and he was the one who flung the stars into space, and it's now a star that's signposting his birth in very humble surroundings. So they're seeking and worshipping the Son of God. That was their highest priority, is to seek out the newly born King. And it's ironic that if they were three kings, if that's what they were, that they should visit the one who, of course, is the King of all kings and the Lord of lords. They arrive at the place, and the baby, it didn't look like a royal birth or a royal setting. There was no castle, there was no scepter, there was no fanfare, and yet, wrapped in swaddling bands, was the King of glory. Those wise men would have looked at each other, and a smile would have appeared on their face. They've arrived. They found what they were looking for, the pearl of great price. They found it not in a palace, but in a manger, in very humble surroundings. And I pray your journey this Christmas will bring you closer to Jesus. You will travel in faith and meet Jesus afresh. The Jesus of the Christmas story you'll connect with him in a new way. Thank you for joining us today. Next week we look at the shorter journey of the shepherds who came from the hillside down into Bethlehem. So the Lord bless you, and I look forward to connecting with you next week. Thank you.